This rainy Los Angeles night. I was in Santa Monica this afternoon, driving back home, and talking to a friend up in the Bay Area. He's like, "Oh, it's just raining, cast of dogs." I was like, "No, we're into that parched feeling down here. It's just gray and cloudy, but now we got the rain. It's good." So glad you. I know it's like sleet and hail. It's our version of sleet and hail when there's like a drop. So thank you for venturing out and being here with us tonight. Glad to have you here. Anthony, are we live? Awesome. Live streamers, welcome. Thank you so much. As you just heard me say, we have rain in Los Angeles. Miracles do happen. And so we started a little bit late tonight just to give people an opportunity to get here, get out of their cars, fluff their hair back up, and get in some seats. My name is Jeffrey Van Dyke. This is a live event I do once a month, the third Thursday of every month. And it's designed for people that are really on an evolutionary path and are in business. And that combination seems to bring a lot of stuff up, right? There's a lot of stuff in the where those two things meet, and how do we do this spiritual journey and answering our calling and living our purpose and running a business and being powerful leaders in the world. Where do those two things come together, right? What's possible, and what are some of the roadblocks or some of the sort of speed bumps we might encounter along the way? I have a body of work called Tribal Marketing. I'll talk a little bit more about that later tonight. But these events really aren't specifically about my body of work. These are where I get to play in a sandbox with you. This is really where I just tune into a concept or a theme, a topic for each month. And I don't know a whole lot more than that when I show up here. I just open myself up to what wants to come through. I usually teach for about an hour. Then we bring some people up onto the hot seat, and I coach some people on whatever I just taught. I'm a big proponent in taking these etheric ideas and getting our hands dirty and getting them. What does it look like in somebody's life, in somebody's business? So that's why I do the hot seats in the second half of the evening in order to do that. Tonight I have a buddy of mine that's going to swing by later this evening. So my buddy Derek Rydell will be here, and I'm going to be interviewing him a little bit on the topic we're discussing tonight. Hi, welcome. Glad you could be here. And this evening is about redemption in business and the role of redemption in our lives as leaders and what it means to be a redeemer to our audience, to our clients, to our tribe in business. And again, these are two things that we do not normally hear in the same sentence. But it's, as I reflected on what redemption is to me, and the role of redemption in my life and in this world, as well as my business, it seems to me that it's one of the critical components for those of us that are called to be liberators, right? Who here feels like, yeah, my work in the world is meant to liberate people on some level, some way, shape, or form? Yeah, great. And so, of course, the degree to which we can liberate others on some level is the degree to which we've been liberated. And redemption has a role in that liberation. So we're going to unpack that a bit tonight in the first half of tonight's conversation. This is a fairly interactive thing. I'll be talking, but I'm going to be checking in with you, right? I've got a microphone over here. We'll see what you have to say. So if you have questions, write them down. I'll be asking. This is a conversation. Years ago, I read this book. A roommate of mine gave me, this is like I was 23, gave me this book called Sex, Death, Enlightenment. And she's like, bought it at the university bookstore, it was half price, thought you might like it. Tells you a little bit about who I was at 23. And it was this memoir from this guy, Mark Matusik, who really went on this spiritual journey after being head editor at Interview magazine when Warhol was there. And I thought about this journey, and I thought about spiritual teachers, and I don't really remember much of my childhood, so I was like, gosh, maybe I should see somebody, right? One of those weird people, and see why. And sure enough, I walk into my house after getting done reading the book and thinking about it, and there is an invitation from another friend saying, hey, I have this spiritual teacher who is going to be here next weekend, and I want you to be there. She's a channel and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, ugh. But I was aware enough to say, like, okay, read the book, think about it, walk in, get the invitation. I know where I'm supposed to be. And my friend Henry, who always had this sage advice from his Jewish grandmother from the Bronx, one of my favorite sayings from her through him was, he's like, you know, you got to do what my grandmother used to always say. I got to ask him what Grandma's name was. It just dawned on me. 20 years, I've never known Grandma's name. But it was always, Henry, you just got to eat the fish and spit out the bones. Take what works for you and leave the rest, right? And that was the most sage advice I ever got going into the world of spirituality, is take what works for you and leave the rest. So that's what I encourage you to do tonight. This is not meant to proselytize. This is not meant to say, this is the way it is. This is to give a lens, a perspective. And my hope is that this lens, that this perspective opens something up for you, right? Even if what it opens up is, oh, I don't believe that, but it clarified what I do believe, that's great. So eat the fish, spit out the bones, take what works for you, leave the rest. Live streamers, as always, I love having you here. This is a community, and you're as much a part of it as the people here in this room. So feel free to say hello to Dina. You've probably already been doing it. You're very chatty. But say hello to Dina and tell her where you're from. Dina, do you want to wave? Can we swing over and say hello to Dina? I don't know if the camera can go say hi to Dina. So Dina's with you guys tonight. She's holding fort for the live streamers. And as we go through, feel free, type in your questions, type in your curiosity, type in what landed for you. Oh my gosh, that was really cool. Type that in. So let's keep this conversation going. Cool? All right, good. With that, let's move into just a little moment of invocation, and then we will officially dive in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. There's a couple chairs up here. There's a couch over there. There's a couple chairs back here. Come right on in. Great to have you guys here. Good to see you. Yes. One last thing I want to say before we do that then. This physical location is called the Hall Center. And you can go to thehallcenter.com. And it's owned and run by my dear, dear friend, Dr. Prudence Hall. Dr. Hall is one of the foremost regenerative medicine specialists in the world, meaning using medicine to make you more alive. So she's an expert in bioidentical hormone replacement therapies, adrenals, thyroid, and she's also a mystic, which often doesn't go hand in hand with medicine. So this vision of having space in this center to do what she calls the path of fulfillment. Technically, this conversation is part of a broader series here at the Hall Center called the Path of Fulfillment, which is part of the overall journey of health. So that's how I am here in this space. I will say, just the other day, my best friend was like, man, you've done so much in the last year and a half. Like, I'm so proud of you. It's so cool to see what's going on. And she goes, that really happened after you started working with Prudence, isn't it? And I got on her protocol with hormones and thyroid and adrenals, and like, whew, I told her a year and a half ago, I was like, yeah, I have this vision, but like the engine wasn't revving to make the vision happen. And that all changed. So you can go to thehallcenter.com, check that out. Okay, good. So we'll just take a moment and name what's true in this space. And what's true in this space is this is a space of love. It's a space of opportunity. It's a space for you to meet something in a new way, in yourself, in this world, in your business, and in your expression professionally and as a human being on this planet. So just take a moment and know that there is something wanting to be touched in you, and there's something in this world that you are wanting to touch. And we take a moment to allow ourselves to feel that yearning, to feel that something that wants to be known more deeply in you and in this world. And we invite a source, an energy, a love greater than our own knowing to touch that space, to activate it with love, and to open us up to what our next chapter in this world, in our lives, is meant to be. We know that this space is held. We know that this work is already done. We know that the lives you are here to touch, the spirits you're here to reach, the smiles you're meant to smile into are already present. And so we're just gratefully letting it unfold. And so it is. Beautiful. I grew up in Jenison, Michigan. It was outside of Holland, Michigan, which was full of Dutch immigrants. My neighbors were the Dijkstras and the Wiersmas and the Van Kuykens and the Vandermeers. And we had license plate holders that said, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much. It was very homogeneous. It was very religious. And I was very curious. We started being Calvinist, which is a Dutch thing to do, right? John Calvin was a theologian from the 1800s. His big thing was predestination. And I never got it. I mean, the thought was, if God, if the divine is all-knowing, then God would know our whole life. But the idea of predestination and free will never quite, it's like, the puzzle pieces never found each other. And it was a kind of place where you didn't ask questions about that. And I was always asking questions and making comments. I remember when my mom got her tubes tied. I was probably 8. We were at church and she was standing around a bunch of ladies. And I looked up and said, "Oh, did you get your tubes tied too? You look pretty old." I just thought it was something ladies did when they got old. I didn't know what it was, right? But I was always making these kind of comments. Yeah. Then when the summer I turned 13 was the summer I realized, before I'll say that, when I was in 2nd grade, we became evangelicals. So we went from a very sort of staunch Protestantism to dancing the aisles, getting slain in the spirit, speaking in tongues, like holy roller, evangelical, full-on 5,000 person mega church. And I went to those people's elementary school. So this is the backdrop of my life, which is necessary for this conversation about redemption. Because then when I was 13, the summer I turned 13 was when I realized I was gay, which was tantamount to, burning in hell for all of eternity. One of the things that you cannot be. And I struggled for years trying to not be gay. I remember praying day in and day out to why can't you take this away? I now see that this journey I've had is one where I needed to go there to understand the depth of what you cannot be within yourself in order to understand the path of redemption. I also realized that being gay in this lifetime is part of me understanding the journey of coming out, and coming out, and coming out, and coming out, and coming out. Unlike it being a skin color or a height or an eye color or something visible, when you're LGBT, it's something you have to continually out yourself about, especially if you're not, as a guy, I'm not particularly effeminate. So what I see with spiritual people in business that have a message for the world, that are change agents in one way, shape, or form, is that we have to come out. over and over and over again. Showing more about who we are, showing more about our truth in the world, saying the thing that we're called to say to the audience we're meant to say it to, that we're maybe scared to say it to, right? I know the fear of rejection. If you say the thing that you need to say and you don't know how the audience is going to respond. And that's the backdrop so many of us come to our work with as spiritually oriented, purpose-driven business leaders. And whether you're an entrepreneur or in a corporate career, I'm going to call you a business leader. Welcome, come on in. Yeah. I study with a handful of different people. One of those people is a guy named Adyashanti. Adyashanti's a Zen meditation teacher. So when I do like silent meditation retreats, a 5-day sit or 7-day sit, he's one of the guys I'll go do that with. And in the last few years, he's done this whole body of work around Jesus. Now, you might ask, why is a Zen meditation teacher teaching about Jesus? And you could look him up to find more information, but the thing that I heard from him that fascinated me was he said, you know, I've been teaching Zen and he's been teaching for a long time. He's been teaching for a long time, and he said, you know, in the East, they don't have a concept of original sin. If life isn't working well, you just go, oh, I must have been bad in a past life. This is karma. There's not this sense that like there's something wrong inside of us, something bad, something unredeemable, something sinful. And whether you grew up in a Christian household or not, my world religions teacher in college said something that's always stayed with me. He was a Buddhist teaching in a Christian college who had lived in Japan. And he said, you know, my experience is that if you're a Buddhist in America, you're still 98% Christian. And if you're a Christian in Japan, you're still 98% Buddhist. Because the overarching religion colors society so much. And so that's another part of the backdrop for this conversation about redemption, is that wherever you come to this country from, whatever your experience was in your background, there is something inherently wrong with us that we fight against that's part of the fabric of our society. And to me, to do our best work in the world, we've got to find that peace in us. Lay claim to it, experience redemptive love, so that we can come back to the world, having lay claim to something in us that they might still be fighting against. Right? So let me give you 2 different examples of that in my life. One is the obvious story of me growing up gay, fighting against it, eventually coming out, but that still wasn't redemptive. That was just relief at first, right? But at some point going like, okay, I can find this piece of me that feels disgusting, that feels gross, where all the judgment on gay sexuality I had adopted from my childhood, and actually kind of cozy up to that unredeemable part of my sexuality and find my own truth around it, right? But even more than that, the thing that makes it redemptive in my experience isn't just our own ability to have compassion with ourselves, to find something that we kind of don't like about ourselves and start to befriend it, like, okay, that's good psychology. But there's something beyond that that I think is required for redemption, and it is grace. And I think there's a relationship between redemption and grace. Now, redemption to me, I don't know what Webster's says redemption is. Maybe the live streamers, you can tell us. But to me, redemption is taking something that we've judged as broken or wrong and making it whole. That's my definition for redemption. Taking something that we've judged as broken or wrong and making it whole. Grace, to me, is receiving benefit that we did not work to earn. Receiving benefit that we did not work to earn. And to me, there's something really beautiful about redemption and grace and how they can go hand in hand. That we can find something that we've really struggled with. Really struggled to own, really struggled to be within ourselves, really struggled to find any value in, and go on this quest of finding a deeper truth about that part of ourselves. And I think there is a role of psychology in it, and I do a lot of kind of Jungian-based parts work and blah, blah, blah. It's all good. But that alone, in my experience, doesn't do the trick fully. In my experience, there's this moment where we have to open up and go, okay, I'm going to allow even that thing in me to be touched. Even that part of me, I'm going to invite something larger than me to see it, to hold it, to touch it, right? To receive benefit that I did not work to earn. And to me, that's part of the redemptive journey. So I want to share one other story, and then we're going to do a little actual mini workshop in the room tonight. I don't always do this, but we are tonight. When I started I quit Microsoft in 2006. So I've been in this field for the last decade. And I've had 3 different business partners and then my own business. And the first business partner was my mentor, a guy named Tim Kelly, amazing guy, brilliant teacher. We're still dear friends and still teach together. He built a whole body of work around finding your life purpose called True Purpose. And I think it's the best purpose work I've ever seen. From there, I built a company called The Spiritual Marketing Quest with a woman named Suzanne Falter. And then we decided we were going in different directions in 2012. And I'd fallen in love with this guy, and we broke up, and my business was gone, and I was kind of devastated, and that was kind of a shit show for the first half of that year. And I kept wanting to launch something because, like, I didn't have a business anymore. And I kept hearing this voice say, Jeffrey, if you launch anything from this energy, will it provide any benefit in the world? Okay, no. They're like, just hold on, we've got you. We've got you, we've got you. Then later that year, an old friend of mine, Max Simon, he and I got on the phone. And he's like, oh, you aren't working with Suzanne anymore? What are you doing November 2 through 4? I'll never forget that. And my calendar is like a ghost town, right? And like, I used to be like, I'd been speaking a lot and kind of like, I was building my name recognition and all, but at this point, like, nothing's going on. I'm like, oh, I think I can be available, right? So a week later, we get on the phone and he's like, hey, I've been thinking, what would you think about co-leading a year-long program with me? And I was like me, like it never crossed my mind to work with Max. And Spirit's like, remember how we've been telling you that we've got your back and we've got something lined up and you can't see it? Here it is. Sure enough, we did a big event that weekend, had 285 people or so in it, and had 75 people sign up for a 10 to 12,000 year-long program. So there was my payday for the year that I could not have seen or known about. Now here's what's interesting. This was all necessary, but I didn't know why. For a good long time, people in my tribe would come up to me at these events and say, you know, we're here for you, right? Like, you don't need that person. We just want to learn from you. And I'm like, yeah. And they very well may have had people say the same thing to them, right? So, but my people were saying this to me. And when I went to Max after being with Tim and the Suzanne, my tribe was like, what are you doing? We don't want you to partner with anyone else. We just want your work. And I was definitely not in the place to do that. A year after starting with Tim, with Max, he asked me to be CEO of the company. He didn't really want to be the face of the company anymore. He realized he was kind of more of a builder, behind-the-scenes entrepreneur. And I was like, no, right? But he kept pressing, and after about 2 months, I was like, something clicked where it seemed like, okay, I could do that. So I said yes. And I start to try to run his company. And whether he wanted it this way or not, in my mind, he wanted me to run his company his way. And I'm not him. And so I sucked at it. It was awful. It was like the worst thing I've ever done. And like I've had success in my life, but that was awful. And I was just down in the pits. And I had to speak at this conference in Melbourne. And my buddy Taki Moore, who is from Sydney, he and I were on Skype, and he's like, mate, come on, stay with me for a week first. And he has this gorgeous boathouse, like on the water in the North Bay in Sydney. He's like, here's your bed. Okay, so I go to Sydney. And so it's this one big boathouse, and one half is kind of guest bedroom when he has guests, and the other half is his office. Now, I'd never seen somebody work so much in their genius before in my life. Wow. He had this butcher roll of paper that he would pull over his desk, and to make PowerPoint slides, he would pull it over, draw a square on it, draw some things, take a picture with his iPhone, and text the picture to his VA in the Philippines. And that person would make his PowerPoint decks. He didn't like the technology is tactile. Right? And he realized he was tactile, and he figured out a way to work within his genius. So for 4 days, I'm just in the worst place in myself I'd been in a long time, doing work that I just feel so incompetent at. I feel totally helpless, watching him totally function in his genius. And it was the best contrast ever. Because I was like, oh, that's why I'm miserable. I'm not supposed to be doing any of the stuff I'm doing. You know? It's not my genius at all. And so I came back and eventually put the company back in Max's hands, and the rest is history. Now, I look back at it and see it as another journey of redemption. Because what I recognized was what I couldn't be with in myself was helplessness. Wow, I'd never thought of this connection until just now. When I was a kid, my mom, I think now we would say either she had massive hormone imbalances, or we would, she would see somebody. But back then, sometimes with a flip of a switch, she'd fly off the handle into absolute fits of rage. And I would run and hide anywhere I could in the house. Sometimes she'd chase after us, and I felt totally helpless. My dad was building a second home for us, like by himself, nights and weekends. So he was either at work or at the job site building this house. And I didn't know then that the reason I partnered with person after person after person in business was to avoid feeling helpless. Anything that I wasn't good at, the other person could pick up and do, right? And anything that I kind of felt like, oh, that's not my bailiwick, I'd just be like, you can just take care of that over there and leave it in their hands. And after this experience, I realized that it was an experience of redeeming my helpless self. And part of it was actually coming face to face with my own helplessness, like being in the muck of it. And actually learning to forgive myself for saying yes to this opportunity, for getting myself into the predicament. But even more so, finding the young part of me that was so scared and welcoming that part of me back into my life. And interestingly enough, over the last couple of years, I haven't been partnering with anyone else, right? I've just been building my own business, my own brand, and taking this body of work that I do called tribal marketing to a much bigger level of reach in the world. And I see that I could not be building this business in the way I've been building it. So this year I certified my first group of people in this body of work. I have a marketing team, a sales team, a director of training. The infrastructure is really being built out in a way that I had avoided previously in my business. And if I needed to avoid feeling helpless, that would not be possible. Because anybody who's ever endeavored to build something bigger than you're used to, you're going to feel helpless at times. You're going to feel like you're beyond what you know how to do. You're going to feel sometimes like you're up the river and there's an imaginary paddle that's not there. That's going to happen, right? And for me, I avoided it because I couldn't deal with that emotional state until I did this redemptive journey. And really, I remember in Sydney one morning just saying to God, all right, help. Like, I know I can't do this anymore. There's got to be another way. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the solution is with Max. I don't know what my future looks like. But I know I'm not meant to be doing this anymore, this way. And that, to me, is where grace came in. Because to receive grace requires one thing: surrender. We must open to grace. We can't do this and allow grace to come in. There has to be this, okay, touch this thing in me that I haven't liked, that I've been unwilling to look at, that I've been ostracizing. Hold it with me. And part of that grace helps make it whole. That's the redemptive bit. That's the redemptive journey. So I give you that example, both my childhood example and this adulthood example, to show you both sort of a life's journey into redemption, as well as a business example of redemption. And that, I've built a very successful company, but I couldn't do it without redemption. And that thing I said earlier tonight about like these two conversations around the spiritual journey and things like redemption and business and success, like we don't often put them together. But in truth, my experience is that when we allow ourselves to put them together, it's really the fast track, right? So let me just check and see if there's anything else I'm supposed to say as foundation. Okay. One more thing, and then we'll go through a little journey. Part of the reason this conversation is because it's December. And back to the conversation about Adyashanti. Adya said, yeah, I've been teaching this Zen Buddhist stuff for so long, but in the West, there's just something it hasn't been able to touch in the Westerners. There's this thing where they're bad. Where in the East, it's just like, oh, I must have been bad before, so this is just karma. But in the West, there's something like inherently bad, inherently wrong, inherently broken. And he's like, in my experience, Zen just didn't touch it. And what is required in the West is a redemptive love. And the reason he said he went to the Jesus teachings is because Jesus was a teacher of redemptive love, right? if we strip all the dogma away and just take this word Savior, right, and take all the stuff you think about that word and the whole story and everything else, strip it all away and just go, oh, that's a word around redemption. Oh, I'll help make something in you that feels broken whole again. That's the frequency of that teaching. That's the energy of that teaching, right? Wherever you come to that from. And Derek, who's going to be here later, that I'm going to bring up, I'll say more about him later. So he said, I needed to start getting into the teachings of Jesus because this redemptive love was something that I just felt was so needed in the West. And his experience has been that when he started bringing that teaching into his teachings, that something shifted for his tribe. Good. Okay. So now I want to, okay, I got to add this little piece too, and then we'll go there. The reason I needed to bring this in is a lot of people in the background of their consciousness, like definitely not like up here in their everyday thoughts, as I work with them around their leadership development, around their inner development, as it relates to their calling, as it relates to their bigger life's work, are unconsciously mad at God, pissed sometimes, angry with something we might label as God or the divine or whatever it is. And I think that adds a unique, interesting, complex layer around redemption. When we seek redemption with a divine love and we're angry at something we attach to divine love. And so sometimes what needs to be redeemed is our own relationship to the divine, such that we can actually trust that divine energy to touch something in us that needs redeeming. All right, I'll say it again. When I get little, my friends call it my spiritual Tourette's. That if, yeah, if what's required is a redemptive love by something we might call divine love or God, and way in the back of our consciousness, we're angry or mistrusting of that same divine energy of God. And it might be like what I would call the God of our fathers, right? The childhood God. But it's still connected, hooked up somehow to something we might call divine energy today. So if we're angry at that, but need that thing to touch something in us for our redemption to make us more whole and be more powerful, influential leaders in the world, then where we actually have to start is back here. So sometimes the thing that needs to be redeemed isn't just in us. Sometimes the thing that needs to be redeemed is the very redemptive energy we're looking for. Which can kind of screw your mind up a little bit. Because how do you do that, right? And there's only one word I'm going to say about that, which is to become willing. That's all that's required. You don't need to know how, you don't need the rest, you just need to be willing to say, I'm willing to have that happen. I'm willing for that transformation to occur. And then stay attuned. Okay, good. So, I want to share just a little bit about my body of work. I just saw Pat go. Yes, let's pause there. This is the perfect time for some questions before we go into the next session. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, where did the West get this redemptive love from?
So I would say, and I'm not gonna suggest I'm a theologian or an expert on this as a result. But in my experience, like I look at Buddha and I look at Muhammad and I look at Jesus, and they all have different. I'm a musician, so everything's frequency to me, right?
and they all have different frequencies of their teaching. And I see Jesus and the frequency of Jesus as this redemptive form of love. So I'll share a little bit about my work in a minute, which looks at people's core wounds as the training program for their life's contribution, and I use it for marketing. But there is, for a lot of people, not all people, but especially in the West, this sense that something in them is base, wrong, evil, broken, dirty. It's and that's what we fight against. And my experience is when we can touch that thing and liberate it, it liberates us because we don't fight against it anymore.
So in summary, it's because of religion, Christianity.
I think that there is a lot of religious elements in the shame that causes us to feel broken. Mm-hmm. Yes. A lot of my clients, the place where that sense of brokenness comes from is related to religion.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. And, one of the things Tim does, my mentor, is look at the higher purpose of whole organizations and institutions, like a company, and I do this as well, a company, a institution like the institution of government or the institution of religion. And so you can look oftentimes at institutions like religion and go like, wow, like I can see that there's a higher purpose, but the way in which it's being brought to the world right now seems quite off purpose in my experience. There was another question over here. Yes, no? All right. Other questions? Comments? Dina?
No questions. They're really loving the talk. They're relating to it, and they're calling it gorgeous and excellent.
All right.
So they're right on board.
Cool.
Okay.
Cool. Well, let's go into the next section then. So, when I worked with Tim, I started to see the relationship between people's core wounds and their life's purpose. And in Tim's work, we essentially get permission. We seek out the reasons why not to find the purpose and people's resistance to really knowing what their purpose is. And there's a lot of reasons to resist knowing, right? Because you can't unknow. So we first seek to understand the reasons why you wouldn't want to know the purpose, and then create the conditions under which the ego says, okay, if under those conditions it's safe, then I can move forward, right? And then we have them essentially connect with something larger than their own ego that could know their purpose and tell it to them, and download very specific details about their purpose. But the part of that work that always fascinated me was the work with the resistance to knowing. I somehow was very attuned to people's internal resistance and understood it very, very clearly. I could almost see the architecture of their wounding in 3D. And then when I built this company with Suzanne, we would find brands for people and go-to-market strategy where they could see like, oh wow, that could be $1 million, $2 million brand within the next year. And they'd flip out, right? They'd feel like, oh gosh, I'm not sure I'm ready for that. So I started to work with people around their resistance to success, and the parts of them that felt like they weren't ready for it or didn't deserve it or whatever the story was. What was interesting was I started to see the relationship between their own wounding and who their market is. And that the underlying pattern of their own wounding mirrored the underlying pattern that caused the surface level problems of their ideal tribe. Suzanne would come to me and say, oh, we worked with so-and-so, and here's the market, and here's the market's craving. And I'd be like, oh, I could have told you that. Given who they were and what their craving was, of course that's the market. So I thought, well, gosh, can we reverse engineer this? Because one of the big business problems for entrepreneurs is really knowing who precisely needs your work in the world. Who's ever had this experience, or maybe currently still has it, where you feel like I've got something, and sometimes people respond, but sometimes they don't. You don't know why, which ones are which, and you certainly don't know this like absolute focus about where to go in your marketing so that your ideal people go, that's me, yes. Anybody ever been in that boat? Uh-huh, good. Because I say it's good, we don't want to keep you there because we want your work into the hands of the people that need it. But there's something really beautiful that it sends you on a quest, which is what I'm going to talk about here for a minute. When we can see the relationship between your greatest struggles and the underlying pattern of your tribe, we find the connective tissue between you and your gifts in this world and who needs them. And that piece of finding that connective tissue between your gifts and the people that most are hungry for them is a beautiful thing. And what I find so fascinating and beautiful is that when we see the connective tissue between your struggles and their need, it actually has the beginnings of a reclamation of the wound by giving the wound a higher purpose. Now, nobody's walking around saying like, I have an abandonment wound, and so I can't retain employees. Do you have a course for that? Right? Nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
So we can't market to the underlying pattern. But once we identify it, we go, oh, I'm a master of that pattern. I've traversed that landscape over and over and over in my life. Let me ask you, would you traverse a pattern over and over again in your life just to leave it and teach about something else?
No.
No, right? You'd take your giftedness and apply it to your tribe. And you'd say, that thing, I know all about that. Right? I've been in the ins and outs. I know the nooks and the crannies, and I know which berries to eat and which ones are going to give you the shits in the morning, right? I know if the wind turns this way in that landscape, it means stay at base camp, and when it's this way, we can keep hiking, right? You're a Sherpa of this landscape. That's what your tribe is looking for. It's what I call your life's PhD, right? You've been in school for that thing since you were a kid, and depending on your perspective, maybe even earlier. But that alone doesn't make a business. So then we have to go, okay, if that's the underlying pattern, what's the symptom that's occurring in one of a few areas of life where they're experiencing problems, where they know about those problems, and when they're willing to spend money to get a solution? So some of these are more obvious. If we take abandonment and you're in the relationship space, okay, that's a little bit more obvious. If you have this abandonment pattern, you're going to know more about people that have an abandonment pattern and how that shows up in a relationship than just about anything else. But if we take it to another arena, say business, you go, okay, well, what does abandonment have to do with business? Oh, well, there's a good chance that if you have an abandonment pattern, you feel really alone on your journey, right? If you feel really alone on your journey, chances are, let's say you work with entrepreneurs, that the entrepreneurs you're going to do best at working with don't reach out for help. That they try to do everything themselves because they can't trust people because people leave them, right? And then what are the problems that are going to occur? Well, they're going to be stressed out, burned out, totally maxed. They're going to have an absolute ceiling on their business growth because they can't put the staff in place to build the infrastructure for the business to grow. And at some point, they're going to feel pinched around their contribution, meaning there's something more I need to do and I can't get it out there and I don't know why. Now, if you have a life PhD in abandonment, you can say to them, yeah, so let me ask you, When's the last time you hired somebody for support? Oh, last year. And let me guess, are they still with you or not? No, they're not. Oh, and did they leave you? Did they leave you high and dry? And just like all the other employees do? Yeah, right? Oh, uh-huh. And are you scared to hire other people because they're going to do the same thing? If this doesn't change, is your business ever going to grow? No. Do you want your business to grow? And if I could tell you, I could guide you into building your business, finding the right staff, people that you could absolutely trust and rely on, that have your back and will be there even in your toughest times as a business owner, would you like that kind of support? Yeah, that sounds great. All right, cool. We should talk. Right? So there's always a relationship between your underlying wound and the need of the tribe. It's just finding the connect the dots between your wound and the pattern of the tribe, and between the underlying problem and the surface level problem, where they can actually point to it and say, I need help with that thing. And that's where I work to position my clients and build their marketing and build their go-to-market strategy and really build your expertise. Because that's the place where you have zero competition, right? I break problems up into 3 different sections of known problems. Oh, yeah, I need help with that. Here's my credit card. Secret problems, which is how they feel about it, that they're aware of, but don't really tell anybody else about, or they feel embarrassed or ashamed or nervous or scared for the future, that if you were able to speak to it and it felt like you were inside their brain, it builds immediate trust and rapport. And the unknown problem, which is what you actually have to deliver transformation to in order to deliver a lasting solution to them in their lives. And when you have that 3D model of their problem set of known, secret, and unknown, you really understand the inside and out version of your clients, like nobody else does in the world. So that's just a little preview of things I do in tribal marketing and how I help people build businesses. But there's a piece of what I do that I want to take into tonight's conversation around redemptive love. When I work with clients to help them understand what their own wounding is, in order to understand the wound pattern of their tribe, what I do is I have them start by telling me about some of their wounding experiences. And those can be chronic or acute. It can be like moments in time that were really scary, or just growing up with a big sister who always outshined you, or a dad who was super angry and explosive and alcoholic, or whatever it might be. And with each of the experiences I bring people through, I ask 5 primary questions. What happened, which is the raw material? How did you feel, which is the painful emotions you experienced? What did you crave, which is the longing you had in those moments? How did you compensate, which tells me how you reacted to the wounding experiences to get more of what you craved and less of the painful experiences, which, by the way, built a unique skill set in you that we can use to help pull out what's unique about you in the marketplace. And then lastly, what did you believe? And that's what I'm going to bring into tonight. What did you believe? When we have wounding experiences, we make up why they happen. Let's face it, they're confusing, right? We don't know why they're happening. And we can't blame mom and dad. That's biting the hand that feeds us. Keeps the roof over our head. They're feeding us. We want their love. So we can't blame the people we want the love from. So we blame ourselves. Oh, this is happening to me because I'm fill in the blank. And these beliefs, these what I call identity-based beliefs, are the kernel of the wound. So, for example, when I last went through my own tribal marketing process, Noah runs the marketing for my company, and I had him take me through my process not long ago. Like, it's been a while since I've revisited my own stuff. Let's bring me through this process. And did this journey, and I usually do 3 to 4 childhood wounding experiences and 2 to 3 adulthood ones. And the reason is that patterns repeat. So it starts in childhood, but I want to be sure that it shows back up in adulthood to be sure that we got the pattern right. So we did this, and the belief I came up with, right, for each one, I say, oh, this happened because I'm, and I say whatever the belief is that I can think of. And then we look at all these I am statements and find the recurring theme. And the pattern I came up with most recently was, I'm an unlovable, unacceptable outcast. Now, I know my tribe's wounding, one of the core wounds is around belonging. The other one is about unabashed expression of power. But that belonging wound of being the outsider, of being maybe ahead of your times, of being a truth teller, maybe to organizations that don't always want to hear it. It's easy to feel like an outcast or an outsider, right? And so that was like I've spent the last little while cozying up to my inner outcast, right? Those of you that have been here for a while and live streamers, you know I've talked about this. And it's funny. For me, when new stuff comes into my world, it starts like out here in the outside orbit, right? And it's like, ding, ding. And it's like just this little idea out here, but I catch it. And then it gets a little louder and a little closer, and eventually like opportunities start showing up in my life and my business. That's usually how it occurs for me. Like when I moved to Los Angeles, I remember being with my friend Michael Wu and having this thought one day. We were hanging out. I was like, I just had the weirdest thought. I might live in Los Angeles someday. Huh, that's weird, right? That's all it was. Here I am. This one just moved here a few weeks ago. And same thing. She was living in Phoenix, and she outgrew Phoenix energetically. No longer a match. I was like, so where are you supposed to go to? She goes, Los Angeles. I was like, great. When are you coming? By December. Welcome. Yeah. The part of us that I find that we hold as most unredeemable is the part that holds this fundamental wound-driven belief. Say it again. The part that we hold as most unredeemable is the part that holds this wound-driven belief for us. The structure of our lives in the first half of life is we pick up one of these beliefs. I'm a worthless piece of shit. I'm whatever it is. Pick a belief, any belief. And then we react to it. And that's actually how we develop our skills and abilities in the first half of life. So folks that have a belief that says I'm stupid, oftentimes go get a few PhDs. When I am working with people that are type A uber achievers, invariably there's some version of I'm a failure in the background that they're reacting against, having success no matter what, because they cannot be a failure. In the financial services industry, it's not uncommon for people to have a core wound around worthlessness. I'm a worthless piece of shit. And what do? They go work in a field around creating more value in the world, right? So it's interesting. I start to see these patterns in certain industries even. But that belief we pick up, is something we say that we are, that simultaneously we cannot be. Right? When this young part of you says, I'm an unlovable outcast, can't be that in a homogeneous community full of white, waspy, Dutch Calvinist immigrants in Holland, Michigan. So then you got to do everything you can to not do that. Is it any surprise that I've built an entire body of work around finding your tribe if I have a wound around being an outcast? Right? That's the magic of it, if you allow yourself to receive the benefit. To actually see the higher purpose of the wound, how it drove you in the first half of life. And then when you're called to your work in the world, what skills and abilities it developed in you that are absolutely unique to you because of how you reacted to that belief. Who you can know and empathize with at a deeper level than anybody else in the world because you've lived that journey. Right? So it provided massive benefit, and if we don't do our redemptive journey with the part that holds that belief, we are always reacting against it. Can't be that, can't be that, can't be that, hot potato. And when I work with, senior executives, Fortune 500 CEOs that say, Jeffrey, I have 20, 30,000 people on the payroll that have a livelihood because of this company. And I still got to put on the face and make this company run, but I can barely get out of bed today. It's because they've been pushing against that wound for so long, and it's the push against the wound that built their success. And what's being called for is a redemptive journey of reclaiming the lost part of themselves and then coming back to the world more whole, more capable, more loving, more powerful because they're more embodied. But they aren't aware that that's what's going on. All they know is, I can barely get out of bed. Please help. So I want to do a little journey of have us find what this belief might be for you. So I'm gonna take you on a little exercise here in a minute. And live streamers, you can do this with us. I'm not going to force anybody to say these statements out loud. I might ask, but you can say them or not. So know that you can keep it confidential to yourself as we go through this process. But this piece of finding this belief at the kernel, at the core of the wound, is really one of the most powerful things I've ever discovered. And I kind of stumbled on it because I kept doing this wound work and kept finding, oh, there's a belief down there. That's at the foundation of the whole thing. So I want you to think about one or two of your life's greatest struggles, your most wounding experiences. These can either be acute moments. I had a girl in a training I led who's remembered the day her brother died when she was 12, right? So it can be that, or it can be chronic experiences. Growing up with a perfectionist mother that you could never live up to, growing up with an alcoholic father, growing up with somebody that molested you over years, whatever it is, I want you to think about one or two of your most difficult experiences in your life. And we'll just go through these 5 questions just a little bit. When that happened, and if it's a chronic thing that happened over and over again, think about maybe one instance of that happening. That can often help. Ask yourself, when that happened, how did I feel? You might have a couple emotional words come up. In the moment, it might have been terror or shocked. But after that, it might have been something a little deeper, like sad or alone or rejected. How did I feel? Next question is, when I felt that way, what did I crave? What did I long for? What did I wish to feel? I know when I felt alone, I wanted to feel accepted. I wanted to feel a sense of belonging. I wanted to feel held. What did you crave in those moments? Then you can ask yourself, what did I do in response? What did I do to try to get by in those experiences, to try to make sense of my life in those moments? What did I do? And you might even look at, what skills did I develop when I did that thing? And you might even look at, how are those skills beneficial in my work today? And then lastly, I want you to ask yourself, when that happened, I said to myself, oh, this is happening because I'm what? I'm what? We're just going to color that in a little bit. And people that are what? What's the judgment in your own psyche about those kind of people? Third, if you think about your family or community you grow up in and their judgments on those kind of people, they would say those kinds of people are what? And then lastly, I just want to have you write a I am statement. I am, and there's a noun at the end. So for me it was, I'm a unwanted, unlovable outcast. Outcast is the noun, right? So write an I am statement that includes a noun at the end based on what you just wrote. Now, raise your hand if that looks at all familiar to you. Raise your hand if you can see that you've reacted to that life and it shaped how you've lived your life. If you work with clients, or if you're an executive and you have employees, raise your hand if you can see that this underlying pattern, something related to this wound belief, has shown up in the people you've had the most rapport with. Okay, and you might not be able to see that yet because this is just the straight up belief. And when I work with people around marketing, we have to look at the pattern, not just the individual belief, because the belief is your own experience, but the pattern that comes from it is what you share in common with the tribe. Now I just want you to ask yourself, is there a part of me that still holds this belief? Like, is there still some charge around it? Is there still some energy to it? Maybe not a part of you run into every day, maybe not something you like to look at very often. But if you're like, yeah, somewhere in there, that thing's still cooking. I have good news. What I've seen is that all core wounds, all wounds, have an expiration date.
As does life.
As does life.
My experience is we usually encounter the expiration date of the wound before the expiration date of our life. Or at least folks in my tribe tend to have that experience. The expiration date happens when we've been in that unconscious reactivity to that belief. Can't be that, can't be that, can't be that. I'm going to go build my life this way. And where the drive against being that starts to fall apart, right? It's like with the executive that says, I can't get out of bed in the morning and I don't know why. Why? Because his dad says he's never going to amount to anything and he's a worthless piece of crap. And some part of him took on that belief and reacted against it. But the wound reaches expiration date, so there's no reactive fuel left, so he's like a puddle. Right? And that's when we're called to do this journey back to the part of us that holds this belief and bring redemptive love to it. Those of you that have been here before know I talk about moving from a wound-driven operating system to a purpose-driven operating system. And this is the fundamental underlying journey, is finding what's at the foundation of the whole structure, right? This is Jenga. What's at the foundation of the whole structure? And at the foundation, in my experience, is this belief. In the first half of life, I do believe that it's actually purposeful, that it serves, that there's something holy about it as a result. And my experience is that there's a time when it expires, we're called to move back towards it, redeem that lost part of ourselves, welcome it back into our lives, and step back out into the world. And when we're no longer pushing against it and reacting to it, it frees us up. And the replacement drive, the replacement energy, is the desire that naturally starts to well up in its stead. What do I want? What's pulling me forward? Right? That's the juice, right? And that becomes the new way we function in life. It's also why I think a lot of times in the second half of life, people want more sense of purpose, because that old thing ain't serving anymore. They can't seem to find much motivation and drive from it anymore. And there's something bigger and deeper and more expansive that wants to be expressed. The desire wants to find an avenue to be expressed. Yes? Good. So I'm going to do one, maybe two hot seats, and then we're going to bring Derek up in just a bit. I'm going to see if there's anybody want to share your experience just naming that belief? Yes.
So the belief that I've uncovered is not being worthy of anything, love specifically. And
Let me
yes.
just play a little game with you.
Please.
Because I used to just stop there. But where I go these days is that tells me what you're not. I'm unworthy, right? But it doesn't tell me what you are. So I'm not worthy of love because I'm what?
Wow. Because I'm weak, not enough, just kind of like a filler.
I'm a weak filler. How's that one?
Oh.
Yeah. And can you see that you've tried to do a lot of stuff to not be a weak filler?
Oh my God, so much.
Yeah. I want you just for a moment, just find where that like weak filler sits in your body and just say hello to it. Just ask it this one question. If it wanted something from you at this point in your life, what is it?
to love me.
Yeah. One more question. If it knew your love and had it, what role would it want to play in your life?
It would disappear.
And what would be there in its stead?
Wholeness, freedom to actually be.
Now I just want to take one more moment and imagine that this part of you, this worthless filler, was in this state of wholeness. How would you experience life? How would you experience your leadership? What do you see would be possible for you that you've been struggling against heretofore?
Wow. I would be able to share myself with the world from a place of fullness versus lack and needing validation. It would change the whole paradigm of my work and my place in the world.
Beautiful. Good. So just give that part of you an extra little energy of love. If you're open to it, you can even invite something larger than you to touch it with this thing we might call grace. And to hold it with or even for you. Good. Take a deep through your body breath in and sigh out. Good. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more moment.
Oh, great.
So, I talked at the beginning of tonight about this relationship between this deeper, kind of juicy, sometimes esoteric conversation about things like redemption and business. So, what's your work? Actually, come up here for just a second if you would.
I was just waiting
What's
for
your,
you to ask.
what's your
me
name?
that. My name's Maggie.
Maggie.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
So, what's your work?
I'm a spiritual life coach.
All right, cool. Who do you serve in your work?
So, just last week, I finally had enough fear to leave me that I admitted what I've known all along, that I am here to serve people that have battled or are battling health crises,
Okay,
because that's what I became awake through.
got it. And what kind of health crises?
Specifically stress-induced diseases that, like mine was caused by being stressed from a corporate job. So people in corporate, that their bodies start attacking themselves because they're so out of alignment.
Got it. Cool. Good. By the way, does it sound like a spiritual life coach? No. No. Right. So we're going to do a little work on that for a minute.
Please.
Yes. So remind us what the wound-driven belief was.
That I'm a weak, worthless filler.
Great. I'm a weak, worthless filler. And when you were in corporate, can you see how you reacted to that and how that caused stress? How did that drive you?
Ooh, wow. Because in corporate, I was a weak, worthless filler.
Uh-huh.
And so, I was actually like living my core belief,
Uh-huh.
which felt horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think there's many other people in corporate that feel like worthless fillers?
Oh, yeah.
So let's draw the connection between feeling like a worthless filler and the stress-induced illness. So when one feels like a worthless filler, how do they react to it? How does that cause stress? Your people.
Wow. So they feel like a worthless filler, and then when anyone treats them like they are, or their external situation says that they are, then they freak out.
Like what? What does
Because it's
freak
their
out
biggest
look like?
pain point.
Yeah.
Over-medicate, numb themselves, cheat on their loved ones, do anything to feel
Validated?
validated and alive because they're so miserable.
Yeah. So validation is one of the core drivers of her tribe. Do you see that? The search for validation. The underlying wound is I'm a worthless filler. So I'm a worthless filler, I want to get validated. I'm a worthless filler, I'm going to get validated. And then, of course, the way the soul works is the ego goes, no, I'm not that. No, not that. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to feel it. And the soul's like, draws it in, right? So what happens, of course, for someone that feels like a worthless filler is they will repeatedly find themselves in experiences where they feel like a worthless filler. Spiritually, it's the opportunity to go, is that really true? Still want to hold that belief? It's an opportunity every time it comes up to choose differently. And we do it when and if we're ready.
Wow.
So, your people, let me ask you this.
So crazy.
Yeah, like you're seeing your life in front of your eyes now, aren't you?
Yes, and I teach about this. I'm teaching on Sunday all about core beliefs and self-love, but I still need it for myself. Of course, that's why I teach it.
Well, none of us can see the forest for the trees,
Yeah.
right? I have people in my life that I had, like I told you, I had Noah take me through it not long ago. I don't do this work on myself.
So crazy.
So good. So what's life like if I feel like worthless filler? I'm seeking validation. What might be my daily grind that is stress-inducing?
Oh my God. So when the world does receive me as the light and leader that I am, I go into shock. I am like, whoa, like really? Me? I can't receive it.
So on a more tangible level, do these people not rise in the ranks in their careers very much?
You mean my clients or me?
Your potential clients who are in corporate and feel like worthless fillers.
Right, okay. No.
Like, can they receive, oh yes, I am great.
No.
You should promote me.
No.
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 Right. So they're always feeling like, okay, here's what it's got. They're always feeling they're going to be found out. Yes?
Found out that they are a worthless filler. Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
their work isn't going to be up to par. They aren't going to get the promotion. They're going to go for their annual review and get demerits. Somebody else is going to be promoted above them.
Wow.
So they're always working to not be found out, which is different than working to succeed.
Yes. Oh my God. I have this thing where I always think I'm going to get in trouble. Anyone says my name, they're like, Maggie. I'm like, oh my God, what'd I do? And it's because I feel like they're going to find out.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, here's how I would talk about your work if I were you.
Thank you.
And this is just like a teeny little, like when I do deep dive with people, it's a 3-month thing I do with people. But, you know, I would say something like, oh, what do you do? I work with, is it primarily women or men?
No, it's pretty even.
Pretty even.
Yeah.
I work with folks in corporate who are stuck in the rat race, feeling deeply unfulfilled, and who are sick of feeling stressed every single day. In fact, most of my clients start to get some form of stress-reduced illness that they cannot figure out. They suspect it's related to their career, but they have no idea how to make changes in their life to both increase their health and find a deeper level of fulfillment in their work.
Yeah.
Right? Which is very different than saying I'm a spiritual life coach.
Yeah.
That's not what they're looking for. They are looking for more fulfillment
Wow.
because they're feeling like a worthless filler right now. And the difference in what you can charge being a spiritual life coach and being an expert in working with people in corporate who have mysterious stress-related illnesses and need a deeper level of fulfillment in their life and career is massive.
So what would something like that be called?
I wouldn't call it something. So I never train clients to answer the question, what do you do, with an answer about them, because people aren't interested in you. They're interested in themselves. So the answer has to be, I work with these people with this problem. And when you answer someone about themselves, and they are that kind of person with that kind of problem, guess what they do? Oh my God, that's me. Oh, that's me.
Whoa.
And if they're not your tribe members, guess what they do instead? You know, that makes me think of my cousin so-and-so.
Totally.
I should connect you guys.
Oh my God.
In my marketing training, I call this passing the identification test, that when you talk about what you do, people should identify themselves or someone else that they know. And if that's not happening, the way you're answering the question, what do you do, isn't effective. Make sense?
Yeah.
Good. So you can drop worrying about, do I call myself a coach or a consultant or this or that, and just say, I work with these people with this kind of problem.
Yep.
It actually makes way more sense. When you say I'm a spiritual life coach, while it seems like it should make more sense, it actually doesn't. We don't know what the hell that means.
No.
I work in
don't
this
either.
industry and I don't even know what that means.
I don't even know what it means.
Right,
Totally.
right. So it's not helping anybody. So that's the intersection of spirituality and business here, is taking this wound and turning it into a money-making business. Making sense?
Yeah.
Good. Does that give you at least the beginnings of understanding how to turn this wound into gold?
Oh yeah.
That's the alchemical process that we might call redemption. Cool?
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good. So I talked a little long tonight. I usually do a few of these hot seats tonight. And normally I would do 2 or 3 more, but I invited a buddy to join us tonight. So instead of talking more and doing a few more hot seats, instead what I'm going to do is give you the opportunity to talk to me afterwards, and we'll give you a mechanism to be in touch, and we can see if there's further conversation. I have a little story before I bring my buddy up here. I do this thing sometimes. I don't really know I'm doing it, but people tell me, usually a couple years later, that I do these, like, my friends call them drive-bys. I just met somebody last weekend who's like, oh yeah, I met you 4 years ago. I was like, oh, you did? She goes, yeah, I went to one of your events and I told you what I did, and you said, oh no, that's not what you do. And she's like, she said, what do you mean? It was like, oh no, that's not it at all. It's something more like this, but it's going to take you a few years to figure it out. And then I like, right? Just because like, it was a 400-person event. I just, and off I go. So I sometimes do these drive-bys. I don't really realize I do it, but people ask me questions and I get a hit and I'm like, boom, and then I walk away. And then usually a couple of years later, they're like, I was pissed at you for a couple of years. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't like it. But 2 years later, I can tell you it was true. All right. When I met my buddy, Derek, Derek's a really brilliant spiritual teacher and a dear friend. And my read on Derek is that his real work is healing people's relationship with Jesus. That we have a lot of wounding in Christianity around Jesus. And when I first met him, I was like, yo, dude,
I really think this is what you're supposed to be doing in this world. And of course, like, that's just my opinion. But when I was doing this churning about redemptive love, and knowing that Jesus as a teacher, as a energy, as an archetype, is a teacher of redemptive love, I just kept feeling like I've been doing these things for over a year. I've never invited anybody up here as like a guest or anything. That's not been the format for these things. But I kept feeling this ping, like, oh, I got to bring Derek up here. And then he texted me the other day. He's like, yo, you doing your thing on Thursday? If I swing by, you want to go grab dinner afterwards? And oh no, I texted you, didn't I? And you're like, that's funny. I was just thinking about you. I was about to text.
And then you texted me the Jesus thing, and I said I was literally.
Okay, come on up. So this is my buddy. This is like, I'm doing this like my buddy, this thing, this guy over here. This is Derek Rydell.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Good to see you.
So this is my buddy Derek. You don't need this, I guess, huh? Is your pack on?
My pack is on.
All right, cool.
Can you hear me?
Yeah?
I can project. I'm from the theater.
Right. So, so Derek, you've done a lot of work in the world of spirituality, but one of the things, if you hang out with Derek for any period of time, he'll just start spouting out these like scripture verses and like, well, you know what Jesus said, blah 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 blah, and like he has all this Jesus stuff that just like starts flowing out.
It's kind of a scriptural Tourette's.
Right. It's like my version of spiritual Tourette's, exactly. So,
Oh, and what I was going to say over there was when he texted me, I saw a flash of him saying, I want you to come up and talk about Jesus. And then he said, texted me, what I want you to do is come and talk about Jesus. So that was,
So I've talked a little bit about redemptive love and grace tonight. And to me, redemptive love being about finding something that we've deemed broken and making it whole. And grace being receiving benefit that we didn't work to deserve. And to me, when I look at the Jesus story and the archetype of Jesus or Christ consciousness, at the whole story to me is about redemptive love.
that's the good news.
That's good news. So I'm curious. Derek has his own community and works with clients and all that. Where do you see this playing out in people's businesses? Like what can't be redeemed and how that affects how they run their businesses or don't run them. So I want to talk about like the business side, and then I want to like go to the scriptural backdrop.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't personally make a distinction between business or any other area because whatever you can't be with won't let you be.
I would say whatever you can't be with owns you. It's got you by the tail.
Same thing. And, whatever you resist persists, whatever you fight you fuel. And so, and like you were talking about, I mean, when you have an experience when you're younger, some kind of experience, and you get the message, you're expressing yourself in a healthy, normal way. Maybe you're just this person who always loves to be loud and bold, and you get them, your parents tell you, God, you're getting on my nerves, you just need to, be quiet, go in the corner, whatever, and you get the message that being that way or being kind of, your friends say, you're kind of a freak, dude, or it's like, and so freak.
Are you going to use this instead, Anthony? Yeah. All right, so we're just going to
So,
be sure you turn your pack off.
is this off now, the pack? I'm trying.
You gotta turn it off.
I got you off, okay. Are we echoing? Well, actually, it is off.
That's why it wasn't
That
working.
was why it wasn't working. Want to
Here,
turn it on?
Turn it on a minute.
Check, check, check. Is it on? Is it working now? My pack?
Yeah.
We good?
Yeah.
Anthony, do you like this?
Yeah.
Which
All
one?
right.
The pack?
I think you're good now.
Okay.
Yeah, it helps when it's on.
I'll turn it on.
Hear you.
Yes.
Right, the live streamers are like, wait, what?
Oh, okay. Hey. So, you get the message, freak, bad, big and bold, bad, and you repress that part. That becomes part of your shadow, and then you create a compensatory personality trait. You begin to activate being more normal, being more in this lane, or whatever the quality is.
Yeah.
And you go through life and you develop that capacity, that skill, or if you've been told you're stupid, you get really committed to being really, really smart and doing good. And that tends to drive you into a business or into some kind of endeavor that highlights that skill. I'm super organized, I'm super, able to take anything and put it in order, and it's being driven by this compulsive need to not be
Out of control,
wild, lazy, whatever that particular thing you've been trying to run from. And so you get into, relationships, business, things you get interested in because you're like, yeah, I've got a skill. I'm a great organizer. You start an organizing company or whatever the thing is.
Right.
And you can actually be successful at it because you're actually really good at it. And all of these things that society says are the clues that this is right can actually be completely fool's gold. And you can build a whole life based on this mask that you've developed to not feel and to not be the thing that you most have been rejecting, the thing that has the most shame or fear around. So that's the first thing. And then at some point, like you're saying, either the business goes well, but you're miserable, you're unhappy, or whatever was working stops working.
Yep.
Or stops working as well. And then you hit that crisis. And you either hit the crisis because it's no longer working, or you hit the crisis because it's all working, and this is what society says should be good. I've got the house and the money and the status and the title, and then I can't deal with how much pain I had. Then you start drinking or drugs or sex or shopping or whatever. Then the addictions show up to further quell the pain of not really being in integrity with who you are and all the energy you're using to push that part of you away. So that's how I see it show up. And then, like you were saying, there comes a point where you have to turn around and embrace the thing you've been running from.
So here's where I particularly want to hear your voice.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you and I, one of the ways we bond is a deep love for the divine,
Yes.
right? Like we are both lovers of the divine. And you in particular have a relationship to this frequency or energy, this archetypal teacher called Jesus.
Yes.
And to me, that archetypal teacher carries this frequency of redemptive love.
Yes.
So I'm curious if you were to feel into your love of Jesus, your love of this redemptive love, and deliver a message from it for us. What's that message?
Okay. So there was a lot of stuff coming through. Let me see. Well, the thing that actually dropped right at the minute I sat in the chair, what came through and then you shared about redemptive love is the message that there really truly is nothing wrong with you. No mistake has been made. Nothing's broken, nothing's lacking, nothing's missing. There's been no mistake in your life. That everything has been and always is conspiring for your good. Conspiring to ultimately help you to develop the heart of God, to love the way God loves. And everything is, the feeling I get and the awareness I get is, when I sat here, was to just say how much you were loved, how much life completely, deeply, and totally loves you. And God's eyes are too pure to behold iniquity. God's eyes are too pure to see any flaw. The good news and the bad news is that God doesn't know anything about your problems. God doesn't know anything about your flaws. That's why when the sick people would come up to Jesus, he would say things like, Master, can you heal me? Can you do this? And he would say things like, What's the problem? What hinders you? Come on, pick up your bed and walk. Open up your eyes. Lazarus, wake up. You know, he didn't have the capacity to see a problem. He was aware of the appearance of the problem, but he saw, you know, what was really there, which was the perfection, that perfect idea that has never been diminished, has never been tarnished, and can never be, and also can't be improved upon. That's a really big piece, you know, because even in the spiritual self-help world, one of the greatest forms of violence we do to ourselves is not so much the beating of ourselves up, but it's the constant, incessant need to improve ourselves. And I think of it like this, you know, an analogy that comes to me is, you know, in the spiritual world and personal development, we're trying to like all just like go to the light, go to the light, go to the light, become an ascended master, you know, and float off the planet or something. And we're really here to become descended masters. You know, and if you look at a seed, if a seed tried to grow and heal and improve its life the way we've learned, it would pray away all the dirt, right? It's like get rid of all the dirt, all that dark, gross, smelly. What is dirt? It's everything that has died and decayed and rotted. It's literally concentrated death and destruction. And it's the very substance of all life on earth. And if a seed succeeded at growing the way we do and prayed away all the dirt, had a vision board where there was no dirt in sight, right? And it's like standing upon a rock, no dirt anywhere. I did it. I'm free, I'm clean, I'm pure. And the sun would come out and shine its golden light and burn the seed to a crisp. And so the seed doesn't deny the dirt. It buries itself in it. And it doesn't turn it into a tomb, it turns it into a womb. And now the sun comes out and it activates all of that pure, concentrated light and life that's in the dirt, that is the very nature of the dirt. But then also the seed doesn't just grow up, up, up to the light. It grows down, down, down in the dark. And the deeper the roots, the taller the shoots, and the richer the fruits. And that's a model for how we were designed to grow. And that all of our dirt and all the parts we hate and loathe and want to improve over and get rid of, and you know, that's the dirt, that's the soil of our soul where the seed of our true power and purpose and potential is planted in.
Okay.
So
Now I have one more question for you. Over the last, I'm just going to call it recent history. Interpret that how you will. What's been your own journey around redemptive love?
besides everything,
Let me put it, beyond the circumstances,
yeah.
is there a part of yourself you're willing to share with us that you've had to do some redemptive allowing with?
Oh,
Redemptive
a lot.
allowing.
Absolutely, a lot. I mean,
And what's that piece?
yeah, I mean, the last couple of years in particular,
Yeah.
my wife and I separated after almost 25 years of being together. And, you know, I'd done all of this work to feel positive and to, you know that I'm taken care of and supported and all the positive, affirmative stuff you do to feel strong and secure and that you can handle. And as I tell my clients, when they need to step out on life, I talk about the Indiana Jones analogy and the invisible bridge, and you got to step on it in order for it to appear, right? It doesn't appear unless you step out. And so I'd done all this work, and the bridge was there. And so I stepped out of my relationship, my marriage, my family, this thing I built, and the Spirit was like, psych, there's no bridge. And I fell into a chasm, and I ended up in a very dark night of the soul. And everything I had been unconsciously running from all my life, which was, I'm not going to be like my father. I'm not going to be the bad man, the man that leaves his family, the man that is not a good husband and not a good provider. You know, this bad man. I remember when I was in therapy as early 20s, late teens. And I was such a knight in shining armor for the women in my life. And this therapist said, I'm doing all this stuff. He's like, yeah, you're doing all this great stuff. The problem is it's never going to work. And I was like, why? He says, because you're a piece of shit. And of course, he was playing the coyote with me, you know. But I thought I had worked really good on that part of me, you know, all these years. And so when finally I was without anything around me to lean on and to cover up just how I really felt, I came face to face with the bad man, with the abandoning, you know, just the bad man, and a depth of loneliness that I never knew was there. And Jesus came pretty strong in those moments, and I was literally on the floor, you know, literally cried more in the year and a half after that than I have in my entire life. And I've always been a sensitive person. And what I really had to do was to go deep into falling deeply in love with the bad man, with the son of a bitch. And with
what's the
asshole.
value you found in the bad son of a bitch?
So much value.
What's the deeper truth you know now that you
Yeah.
didn't know a few years ago?
Yeah, so what I began to discover was that it really is true that nice guys finish last. That the nice guy syndrome was that I had become a really nice, you know, giving, generous, hardworking guy to not be this bad, hard-ass, controlling, dominating son of a bitch. And whenever confrontation or conflict or things like that would arise, I would always seek to appease. I would always seek to make things nice. And I could for a while, but I suffered tremendously. And when I began to embrace my inner bad man, my inner son of a bitch, what happened was I realized that was actually my rejected power. That was my rejected masculine. That was all the power. You know, I'm getting chills right now even as I think about it. That was this power to, you know, and Jesus came to me and said, you know, this line came through, do not think I've come to bring peace. I've come with a sword to separate man, father from son, and daughter from mother. He basically revealed to me that the path of love is hard ass, badass, radical. And you cannot have an open heart and a weak core. You have to have a strong core. You can't just have a wishbone, you gotta have a backbone. And that in that power, in that raw masculine ownership of my power, finally my heart was able to feel safe enough to open.
There
And-
we go.
Right?
That's where I wanted to be sure we got to.
Yeah. And I also became more of a badass, let's just say. I was able to
You got ripped jeans on and
Right?
all, man.
I was able to stand my ground, speak the truth, you know, and without judgment, without blame, but unrelenting, you know, and it also allowed me to be a stronger coach and leader because I don't care if you like me. I'm not invested in your liking me. I'm invested in you transforming. And I was able to let what needed to come through without any apology, without any dancing around it. And I watched as people's lives changed. Like it was like the sword cutting through all the bullshit.
Yeah.
So I got stronger in the power of being able to be focused. And what I didn't expect and began to understand was that my heart, it's like, you know, in a relationship, if the man is strong and holding the strong protection for the woman can open up like a flower and just blossom. And the same thing is within us. When that masculine, when that power is totally there, the heart just goes,
Yeah.
you know. So that,
Beautiful.
so and now, and the result of that was a level of self-love like I haven't never experienced before.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you, my brother.
Hey, if people want to follow your work, where do they go?
Badass.com. No, I'm kidding. Badassjesus.com.
Yeah. Your own personal Jesus.
That might work, right? Might be good.
DerekRydell.com.
TheRealJesus.com? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's DerekRydell.com. That's DerekRydall.com. You can also just go to lawofemergence.com.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
Love you, man. Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. So we're going to wrap in just have a few things to share before we do that. The first one is what to expect after you leave here. I have a habit of opening shit up for people. And so now I just want to tell you, like, you might have had some shit open up. And here's what to expect. It sometimes can be a little difficult, especially when you've revealed something to yourself that you've been keeping your eyes away from for a long time. And the biggest thing I want to invite you to do is to have some compassion with yourself and to have some compassion for the part of you that's been holding whatever this belief is at the kernel of your wound. I like to remind people that if they've held a wound like I'm dismissible, or I'm a worthless piece of shit, or I'm an outcast, that it's a part of you holding the belief, which is different than it being a part of you. Do you understand that distinction slightly? So there's the part of me that holds the belief I'm an outcast, or used to hold it. The part itself is still absolutely lovable and whole. And it was just doing me a favor by holding that belief for 4 decades. Right? Because I needed that belief for my journey. So it was just doing me a favor of holding that thing for me. The part itself is absolutely whole and complete. So even if the part feels broken, feels wrong, feels like it's unredeemable, know that what it's been doing is playing a holy role by holding this belief for you because you needed it for your life's journey. And so the first thing I want to invite you to do is to have some compassion for the part that's been doing that duty. It's been a big job, really big job, for a long time. Second, if there is one thing that can transform it, it is redemptive love. Of course, I have processes I bring people through. Other people have processes they bring people through. All fine and dandy. At the foundation of those processes, however, is a willingness to touch this part of you with that kind of love, with your own intent to find value and wholeness, even if that part of you can't see it. And then, if you're willing to open up and say, I'm even willing to let something larger than me hold it for me or with me. And that second piece is especially important because if you don't know how to hold it, and let's face it, if you've been in battle with a part of yourself for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it can be difficult to hold a part of you you're in judgment of with love. You can pretend you're doing it, but that's almost even worse. So this redemptive love, this grace, is saying, okay, I can't hold this right now. I don't know how. But I'm willing to have something larger than me hold it for me until I can take its hand. And so maybe that's your only prayer for a while. And in the holiday season, with Jesus as the foundation of a lot of tradition in this season, I do believe we're asking for this kind of redemption. In our political climate right now, there's so much that's being revealed that actually is being called for to have some redemptive love hold it. And so whether it's in your own life, in your business, or in the larger field of our society, may that be the prayer. Right? I've passed out a couple forms. I always love to learn about what you learned at these events, how they worked for you, what would you like to see different or better. So if you would do me a favor when we end and just spend a few minutes filling that out, that would be great. On the back side is an application to have a conversation with me or somebody on my team about the work that I do. I've mentioned a little bit about it tonight, and the primary body of work is called tribal marketing. And the foundation of that work is this work around looking at the relationship between your core wounds and your unique expression in this world, and particularly how to use that underlying landscape to identify precisely who you're here to serve, and how to build a brand and positioning so that that audience sees that you're the only person they can really work with, right? So if you're ready to go to another level of your business and of carving out a place in the market that is wholly your own, where as you move into this redemptive love and have more of your power available, you can own that space in the world, then I would love to talk with you. And you can fill that information out on the backside, and our team will be in touch with you about doing that work. Couple other announcements. I do these talks once a month. So I'm looking to see when the next one is in January, which will be the third Thursday. So that would be January 19. Yes, it says event night. Book nothing on my calendar. So January 19 is our next New Year's live event. So be sure to put that in your calendar. And I said this last time. I'm going to keep saying it until I have more information for you. But for now, I am doing an event May 11, 12, and 13 in Los Angeles. So feel free to mark your calendar for that. I'll have more information about that. I was just in Ojai for 2 days. I just got to tell you this for a minute. Oh, it was so cool. So I met these amazing guys, Isaac and Torald Koren. They're musicians. They're like badass rock and roll dudes with massive hearts. And they're creative geniuses. And I'm working with them to make an album, which I haven't done in years. But they've agreed to be at that event. And so what I'm starting, I have a couple of other people already lined up. So there's going to be some very cool people there. And the underlying underbelly promise of that work is to help you become the living embodiment of your brand's promise. The surface level business result is about helping you build more authority in the market. So those are the two things we're really going to be up to in May. That's May 11, 12, 13. I think that's it for today. Live streamers, if you want to talk with me about doing some deeper work with me to build your business, you can go to tribalmarketing.biz/apply. tribalmarketing.biz/apply. And those come into our team. We get back to you within 2 business days and work our magic to schedule a time to be in conversation. So, okay, often songs start playing when I tune in. And what just started playing, this is so funny because I started with like a little song that's like, all you need is love, ba-ba-da-da-da, right? So that is the message for this evening. That there is a purpose to whatever you fought against in your life. It not only sent you on a path that is absolutely unique to you, that had you know how to serve the people you are on earth to serve unlike anyone else in the world. But it's also given you the opportunity to know love at a deeper level than you ever knew possible. And the invitation tonight and always is to take the opportunity to say yes to that love, to say yes to that journey, to say yes to the higher purpose of it all. That it was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to fuel you. It didn't happen to you, it happened for you. So may you go out tonight and into this holiday season and the rest of your journey celebrating what you heretofore have maybe fought against. Thank you so much, everybody. Many blessings. Thank you for being here.
You guys just sing us out with a couple bars.
What's that?
Come on, sing us out with just a couple bars.
Okay. All right. No. All right. Just close your eyes for a minute. this is what they're telling me to sing. I just want to be sure I actually have lyrics, so give me one moment. All right. There we go. So just close your eyes for a minute. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round yon virgin mother and child, holy infant, so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Thank you, everybody. Good night, everybody. Mwah.